Hello, it's Adam again, and I just wanted to express my opinions very briefly on the changes to the status effects changes and Nightblade and Sorcerer specifically, because Nightblade is my second class, even though I don't play it that much. And plus, Nightblade's received some buffs, which I'm very disappointed about. Because it's already ridiculous in PvP, and they've basically just been buffed. I will say about the status effects changes, they don't. They look relatively balanced, to be fair, but unfortunately you cannot test this on the PTS because you can't go into Cyrodiil and fight like multiple people at one time. There's no one in there, so you don't understand. You can't really test properly how strong these are going to be to its full potential. Anyway, I like the status effects changes, so well done to ZeniMax on that. However, if I do go on live and you literally cannot survive because status effects are too strong, then I will be having a very strong opinion about that. But I don't think that'll be the case. Anyway, let's get into Nightblade, because I've been looking over this and I literally cannot believe what I am witnessing here. I very much doubt anyone from ZeniMax actually plays PvP like regularly. It's impossible. Or there's some huge bias going on in there, because I understand completely that there's some people out there that are complaining that Nightblade's not very strong in PvE in comparison to other classes, but you can actually make do in PvE. PvE balance is a lot more important than PvE balance, because, newsflash, you can actually change the content in PvE. You can change the NPCs. You physically can't change the players in PvP. That's why PvP balance is always more important than PvE. If something's underperforming, or if DPS is too low, or healing's too low in PvE, you can just magically change this. You can just lower the HP of the bosses. You can change mechanics, etc., etc. You can physically change the content to suit the changes. You cannot do this in PvP, which is why PvP balance should always be priority, then change the content to suit. That's just my opinion. Which is why I'm very disappointed in these changes. Nightblade next patch is going to be absolutely ridiculously strong, and I'm very disappointed. But I mean, they've already buffed here in Cap Strike, even though it's literally one of the cheapest and best ultimates in the game. I literally don't understand why they've done this. They've actually allowed this morph's bonuses to persist through bar swap as well. That's like, both morphs have getting buffed. If anything, Incap needed a nerf. I don't understand. But fine, you've buffed Incap, but guess what? They've buffed one of the best spammables in the game, right? Concealed weapon. It's just randomly getting a 10% buff. Randomly a 10% buff, even though it's the best spammable in the game, right? And then, right, it deals an additional 10% after you've left stealth or invisibility, right? That's basically a 100, depending if you use cloak, right? That is essentially a 20% damage increase on one of the best spammables in the game, and the minor expedition goes through bar swap. So basically, it's promoting stealth gameplay, and I have a very strong opinion on stealth. I don't think it should be in PvP, because it's basically instant line of sight. It shouldn't be possible. You should not be able to just click a button and just evade all this damage just for pressing a button. No. Even streak doesn't allow this, right? Plus, streak has a rampant cost. I don't think stealth is healthy for PvP. I did see something on the forums where stealth should be a stay in jail card. That is a lot healthier, right? I don't think there should be a cooldown on it because I think cooldowns are very unhealthy for ESO. I do think it should be, and I do agree that nightblade should be the assassin class. I do think that it should deal decent, like very hard hitting damage, in stealth. But I don't think you should just be able to spam stealth, and evade all that damage just immediately like that. No, I think if you want to stop in stealth, that's fine, but you can't just keep pressing it and go back into it. I think you should stay in stealth or not be in stealth. So, and also you've got stealth and minor expedition now. So not only do you have instant line of sight, you're now just ridiculously quick as well. Nightblade's going to be so busted. And then cripple, you've just literally buffed this to do more damage. You just given Nightblade more damage when it was already one of the hardest hitting classes in the game. What? This is another buff. More buffs. Even more buffs. What, a sustained buff? No, Zenimax. You seriously need to look at Nightblade, and you need to... You can either do one or two things. You can just flat out nerf the thing, or you can buff other classes to suit. Now, let me tell you something right now. Even with the changes to Hardened Ward next patch, Sorcerer will be absolutely nowhere near as powerful as what a Nightblade will be next patch. It won't be. If my Sorcerer was as strong as what a Nightblade next patch will be, it would be busted. I am already killing a lot of people, right, in the cancer-ridden meta we have now when Sorcerer is pretty weak. In fact, I'm probably playing Sorcerer the weakest you could possibly play it. So, if Sorcerer was as strong as what this thing is, it would be absolutely ridiculous. And I don't want to be that strong because it's just unfair. When you have a great player on Nightblade next patch, they are going to be literally unstoppable. They're going to be so strong. And I feel as if there's someone from Zenimax that actually is a Nightblade main. And they're just like, we'll throw in some more buffs for my Nightblade, because I'm not doing as well in PvP as what I would like. It feels like that, personally. But, yes, this is actually ridiculous. But I'm not going to be biased. I'm going to talk about Sorcerer next patch and the changes, and I think some things are a bit too strong. I enjoy knowing that Zenimax is looking at some of the unused abilities from Sorcerer, and I do think in a 1v1 this could be very strong. But I don't build for a 1v1. If someone wants to duel me, you're gonna fight us on my open world build. I don't believe in changing class or build just to fight one player, because the game is not balanced for a 1v1 at all. So this really does not really apply to me. But if people are interested in 1v1s, I am sometimes, not often. This could be very strong. So I'm glad about this, because Sork is not the greatest in a 1v1. But this is what I would like to speak about. Not this. That's fine. Completely fine. Because the shield's not as big. This though, this specifically, this value here is too big. It's too big. I did some testing on the PTS and it's too big. Yes, it's actually, if you look at the data and you look at relative heal abilities from other classes like Nightblade, DK, Warden, this is actually balanced per se if you look at the values of healing in PvP. However, this is not a heal. This is protection for your health. So it acts differently. Now, what essentially is going to happen is, because I've actually tested this, the 15% value you're getting is you can probably get 9k critical strikes in PvP. That's a decent heal in PvP, 9k, right? But that 9k that you're getting is actually more potent than what you realise, because that 9k, you will get the full 9k because it's protected by a big ward. It's protected. When you have a Nightblade and it casts a heal, right? It may not necessarily, in the grand schemes of combat mechanics, get... Yes, it might be a 15k crit heal, but it's constantly getting damage taken to its HP, so its potency, right, is less. We're getting this full potency because that heal is being protected from damage. This is very problematic. I think this value should be changed. It should be 5%, or it should be only from your max health, or it should be a heal over time. Sorry, I think adding a burst heal to Conjured Ward is not the way to go. I think, but at this point, you can drop all healing abilities and just apply this. I think that's too strong. You can spam this and just never die, essentially. I also spoke to Malcolm about this, and he is just happy that Sorcerer's getting a buff. And he also expressed that he's not particularly bothered if something's ridiculously strong or not, because throughout the years, classes have been ridiculously strong and some haven't. I can understand that opinion. However, my opinion of combat and PvP balance is, if something's going to be broken and you know it's going to be, prevent it straight away and give Cinemax some alternatives, right? Because I feel as if Cinemax, they'll just look at spreadsheet data and they don't look at the actual how it applies to in-game situations. They just look at spreadsheet data. Now, if you look at spreadsheet data, this is very balanced compared to other heals, but it doesn't act the same. Like I've explained before, the potency's different. This heal's being completely protected by this, so it doesn't work the same in terms of reality. This needs changing. However, I do think this is a very good change for this one, so well done, Zenimax. But I will also say there's some areas which I would like to see buffed for Sorcerer, which would buff Stam Soak and Mag Soak in compensation for this. But it wouldn't be as strong as this. It would buff other areas of Sorcerer, which I do think needs adjusting. So I'll get into that. Minefield, again, this could be very strong in a 1v1 situation. I will not be using it though, but the buff to Sorcerer, it doesn't seem ridiculously strong, so well done Zenimax on that. Expert Summoner, I think this is a very good change, so I'm going to praise ZeniMax for this. However, I will say, if you change this to be a little bit weaker, if you take one of my suggestions into consideration, what I would like to do is this is completely fine, this part. However, I would buff this value to 15%. I'd make this 7.5 and I'd make this 15%. Because I think where is it? I think Conjured Ward should literally do what it has always done and apply shield. And if you're going to buff it, buff the actual value of it through that passive by increasing Max Magicka. Because guess what? Max Magicka, even next patch, will be significantly weaker than weapon and spell damage, remember? Because there's no values to increase it. You know what? If you actually wanted to keep it the same in baseline, it should be 20%, because major and minor what's it called? Major sorcery, etc., gives 20% on weapon and spell damage. So if you really wanted to keep it the same, you'd make that 20%. But no, I'm not going to be ridiculous. Make it 15%. Like I said, I think it should still always act as a preventative measure and a protection ability, and add a heal over time to it, because it will help get you out of execute range. That's all that is needed for this, right? To help you get out of execute range, and this is too strong. So that's what I would do. Buff this to 15%, because max stats is very weak in comparison. And I would also like to go over some of the passives that Sorcerer has very briefly. I think there's a few that could be buffed, and I'm going to give some examples to ZeniMax that could be changed. Especially the rebate passive, far too weak. It should be doubled. I think Daedric Protection, the health recovery on it is just absolutely ridiculous. No one uses health recovery anymore after the nerf to it, and especially people who are a vampire, so it's literally useless. So I think what should happen is its value should be lowered to 10%. Yes, this is going to affect Stamp Soak, but rebate passive would be buffed to compensate. And now we'll talk about some other passives. I think it should be lowered to 10%, but it now affects Magicka recovery, and per Daedric ability, summoning abilities per slotted, you should get critical resistance. Now, ZeniMax, you can look at your spreadsheet data and see what would be balanced with that. Personally, I think maybe 30 critical resistance, 33 critical resistance would be pretty balanced. It would be a nice little buff to Sorcerers, because it's literally called Daedric Protection. Energized passive, I would like this to be all physical and magical damage. Again, this would buff Stam Soak, Hybrid Soak, and Magicka Sorcerer, because Stamina and Hybrid Sorcerers now are using Curse, which is magic damage, and some of them even use Frag. So, use that. Capacitor passive, I think it should be buffed. It should also increase the chance of applying concussion by 50%. Could be adjusted depending on how ZeniMax views it. And I think it should increase the status effect damage by 10%. Again, that value could be changed depending on ZeniMax's opinion. In the big one, if you look at shield costs, whether it be hardened ward, light armor ward, it be healing ward, they are currently on live the weakest form of defense in the game, but simultaneously cost the most. what I would like to do is to buff the Shield Master CP to 20%. Not broken, very balanced. All you're doing is just decreasing the cost of wards to be more in tune, in line with every other defensive ability in the game. I'm not even asking for a buff to light armor ward. I'm not even asking for a buff to healing ward. Even though they do need a buff, I would be happy with just a buff to the Shieldmaster CP. Ward cost a fortune for just literally no reason. And the persistence passive is now after roll dodge or blocking, because there's a lot of sorcerers out there that use a lot of roll dodge, and this passive would help them a lot. And also, this is a maybe, because I've seen people on the forums saying that they would like Major Breach adding to Curse. I think if you include what ZeniMax is doing with this passive here and Conjured Ward, I think if you added Major Breach to Curse, it would be ridiculously strong. However, I would like to see it buffed, and I would like it to be changed uniquely. So and it would buff Stam Soak and Mag Soak and Hybrid Soak, right? Because Stam Soak, although right now it's ridiculous due to proc sets, the class itself and its base kit is not that great. The only reason that it's so strong right now was because of sets. So I'm going to suggest something, and I think it's very balanced, and I think it would buff the class accordingly. If you look at the not the rebate passive, the amplitude passive, it's basically a reverse execute, right? I think that is such a very unique damage type ability passive, and I will give credit to ZeniMax when they introduced it. However, with the changes to the meta, it's extremely hard to burst players on Magicka and Stamina Sorcerer if you're not using the proc sets, which do need a tone down. And the amplitude passive becomes very useless very quickly. So what I would like to do is apply basically a reverse amplitude passive to Curse. I would, when you apply it and when it ends, for 10 seconds you increase your damage against them by 1% per 10% health they do not have. Essentially, what it would do is be a constant 10% damage all the way through how much HP they have. Because I think it's very unfair that Sorcerer just loses damage because the opponent has less HP. I think that's very unfair. Considering that our execute doesn't dynamically scale percentage-wise like every other execute, I think this would be a phenomenal change, ZeniMax, if you're listening. Just a constant 10% damage increase instead of us just losing damage because they've got less HP. I think it's very unfair. Especially now Vampire and HP is so high. I think this would be a very good change, and it wouldn't be overtuned either, like at all. So I think making it a reverse amplitude passive on Curse would be such a fantastic change, and I think Stam Soaks would actually like this change as well. So that's my opinion on that. And one more thing. please do not allow Inner Light from the Mages Guild to stack with Bound Aegis. I don't like that. That is too strong. I think what you should do is not allow Inner Light to stack with Bound Aegis, but buff Inner Light and allow its morphs, its base and its morphs to work on both bars. It should consist. It could work through bar swap. That is a far more balanced suggestion than having Inner Light stacking with Bound Aegis without nerfing Bound Aegis, because that was a fantastic change and you shouldn't change it. But that's my opinion on Sorcerer. I will not be talking about any other class. I will touch on Northern Storm here because I spoke to Cozy about this, and he's a very good Stand Warden. He thinks that this could be ridiculously strong here, but we'll have to wait and see. But I will do another overview of the notes when it comes to the final notes that will go live, and I will express my opinion on that. And if you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like the video. And I will catch you in the next one.